Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving.
I don't wanna take advice from fools.
You always won every time you placed a bet.
Money, that's what I want.
It is time for Pete Rose to shut his pie hole about he should be in the Hall of Fame, he should be reinstated to baseball. Folks, I'm Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. I also happen to be the #1 pro-gambling rights advocate in the world. There is no question you and I, without equivocation, should be able to sit home and place a bet on a baseball game, football game, basketball game. It is our business. But there's also no question you have crossed the line when you are a player, a coach, an NBA referee who is in any way betting on a game in which he can affect the outcome. Pete Rose accepted. He agreed to a lifetime ban from Major League Baseball for breaking its golden rule. What part about agreeing to a lifetime ban did you not understand, Pete Rose? Do you not understand the definition of agreeing? Do you not understand what lifetime ban means? Yeah, I know you claim that Bart Giamatti and you had a gentleman's agreement. Before he died, he said that was absolutely not true. There's no evidence whatsoever other than you claiming that you had some gentleman's agreement, which it doesn't make sense that he would give you a lifetime ban and then start winking back and forth to you. And then we're expected to believe you, the guy who said you didn't bet on baseball. Then, when it became expedient for you, 10 years later, you said, okay, maybe I did bet on baseball, but we're still expected to believe you that Bart Giamatti and you had some type of gentleman's agreement where there is no written record of this whatsoever, please. Or maybe you don't understand Rule 21D of Major League Baseball. It is posted prominently in every single locker room in Major League Baseball. All players said yes. They are briefed on it before each and every season. Let me read it to you verbatim. Any player, umpire, club, or league official or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game in connection with the bettor has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible. Now, either one of two things, Pete. You don't understand what that means, or somehow the rule shouldn't apply to you. Why should the rule not apply to you? That's what you've never been able to explain. Now, you're claiming that you didn't bet against the Reds, and a lot of your supporters are saying, it's no big deal. He only bet on the Reds. What's the big deal? He wanted to win the game. Well, again, the finding by John Dow did not say there was no evidence that you didn't bet against the Reds. In fact, he had said in a New York Times interview that there was evidence, and then he kind of backtracked on it, and he said it was circumstantial, and the evidence wasn't strong enough. Regardless, you've already crossed the line. The rule says nothing about whether you bet for or against your team, but I'll be happy to explain why you did cross the line, why there's a conflict of interest. The #1 criticism against Pete Rose when he was managing was the way he handled pitchers. People said he was extremely erratic. An example might be Scott Scudder's, I believe, was one of his young, up-and-coming pitchers at the time. Let's say Pete Rose has 10 dimes on Scott Scudder getting $1.90. Well, Scudder is struggling in the 8th inning. He allows the first 2 men to get on base. Now, let me use one of Pete Rose's most infamous quotes against him. When he had his 44-game hitting streak, he made some bizarre comment about Gene Garber was pitching him like it's the 7th game of the World Series. Well, it's true. As a manager, during the regular season, you can't manage like it's a 7th game of the World Series. You have to manage like it's 1 out of the 162 games. And among the many examples is when you have a young pitcher, sometimes you got to leave him in tough situations to see if he can get out of that situation. It may arguably decrease your chances of winning that game, but if he does get out of it, he can obviously be a valuable pitcher as the year goes on. But let's say in that case, Scott Scudder, maybe a guy you didn't have total confidence in, struggling a little bit, you're up by 2 runs in the 8th inning, then you decide to bring in John Franco, your closer, to pitch and get 6 outs. Well, if Franco comes in and pitches 2 innings, he's going to be spent. Chances are you won't be able to use him the next night. But if you're managing like it's the 7th game of the World Series because you've got 10 dimes or 20 dimes on the game, there's where your conflict of interest is. You just say to yourself, who cares about tomorrow? I'm just not going to bet on tomorrow's games. So you're going to manage that game as if you want to win, say the Wednesday night game, Thursday day game. What's the big deal? You're not going to be betting on that game. Plus, I know for a fact, nothing will get a tout, a boiler room tout, nothing will get him in trouble with the leagues more than using 2 words, and that is inside information. Touts used to like to say they had inside information. I know the leagues have come after a lot of those touts who have done it in the USA Today, etc. Well, guess what, Pete Rose? You did have inside information. You knew who was going to be in the lineup that night, who wasn't going to be in the lineup. If you didn't bet on that game, maybe you would rest a veteran like Tony Perez or what have you. You knew who was hurt. You probably even had an idea of who was and wasn't going to play on the other team. That's one of the many things that got Tim Donaghy banned from basketball. He was using inside information. So again, the rules of baseball don't say it's all right to bet on a game in which you can affect the outcome as long as you're betting on your team. That's not what the rule says. The rule does apply to you, and there's very good reason why once you've bet anyway on any game that you're involved in, that should permanently ban you from baseball. And you agreed to it, but then you said, well, I agreed to it, but I don't want to agree with it. Now, you've also said something to the effect, well, you picked the wrong vice. You would have been better off beating your wife. You would have been better off doing drugs. Yeah, you picked the wrong vice. Like, maybe you should have picked something like tax evasion. Oh, Pete, you did pick tax evasion. You pled guilty to tax evasion. But, again, irrelevant. Baseball, the jurisdiction for them is to punish people who have committed crimes against the game of baseball. And you're right. When they do commit more serious societal crimes, whether it's you're doing drugs or maybe a very violent act. We all know about the O.J. Simpson argument. People are saying, well, Pete Rose is banned from Baseball Hall of Fame. Shouldn't O.J. Simpson be banned from the NFL Hall of Fame? The crimes against society are different than the crimes against the game. Now, when somebody does commit a crime against society, there's no question that one of those ancillary victims would be the game itself because it embarrasses the game. And yes, every sport has fined and even suspended players for crimes against society. But the crime you committed was against the game of baseball, and it is fully within their jurisdiction. So to use your own words, yeah, if you beat your wife, the jurisdiction is the criminal court system, and if you're found guilty, yes, because baseball, the integrity of the game is damaged a little bit, they may take some damage against you, but again, it's an absurd, absolutely positively absurd point that you're bringing up. Now, the steroids is a little bit more interesting. I know you sign it to, however many career hits you had, and steroids 0. A lot of people are equating steroids, which were steroids and gambling. I agree. Steroid guys are cheaters, and they should be banned for the 150 games, and I really wouldn't be opposed to a lifetime ban. But here is the line that you cross that they didn't. Yes, they are cheaters, but when they're cheating, they are cheating on their behalf to try to make themselves better players. They are cheating, but there's no conflict of interest. I talked about where the conflicts of interest are in gambling, so that is why betting on a game in which you're involved in is still a worse crime against the game than steroids are. And if anything, you could probably use a good argument that steroids should be punished more, but there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is a fair rule of baseball. You knew about the rule, you broke the rule, and you agreed to the lifetime ban. Stop your belly aching because you're making those of us who are pro-gambling, you're making us look bad by whining and what have you. It's crazy, folks. There's zero debate. Pete Rose should be permanently banned from the game of baseball, and it is coming from somebody who is as pro-gambling rights as you'll get. Me, Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. Pete, shut up!